person, so sorry. Sorry about that. Anyway, so we're still on the We Are series, and so I wanted to, mine is We Are the Movement. And I thought, well, that's weird. But then I thought, okay, let's look up the definition of movement. And the definition of movement is the act, process, or result of moving. A particular manner or style of moving. Or usually movements, actions, or activities as of a person or a body of persons. And then there's more. So, tonight I just was thinking about that and how that correlates with us. And my thought process was like, you know, we have gifts and we have feedback, and so let's just get into it, shall we? So if you guys want to turn to 1 Timothy 1:9, it says, "For it is he who delivered and saved us and called us with a calling, in itself holy and leading to holiness, to a life of consecration, a vocational of holiness. He did it, not because of anything of merit that we have done, but because of and to further his own purpose and grace, which was given us in Christ Jesus before the world began." So, I'm trying to wrap my mind around it, but Jesus gave us everything. You know what I mean? There's no gift, there's nothing in this life that God didn't give us, that God didn't create, that God didn't, make happen, that God didn't move. Right? And so I was thinking, like, okay, so what does a movement look like? So, like, the last couple weeks I've been researching, it's just really weird. I've been researching, check. Can you turn this one on? Sorry, this is doing, like, weird noises up here. I don't know if you hear them, but every time I move, it's like, shh. And I'm like, oh, okay. Check. So I was researching, like, the Azusa Street Revival. Has anyone ever researched that? Or the Welsh Revival, which happened around the same time. Or I was also researching Amy Simple McPherson. Wow. What a lady. So today I was like watching some YouTube videos of her, and I was like, okay, because it's like 1920 and we have a completely different language now than 1920. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Anyway, so I thought, wow, those movements were just sparked by something. And I'm thinking, okay, God, like, that's crazy. And how did that happen? All these questions I'm asking and just reading through it, and like, man, some of the stories about Azusa Street Revival and some of the feedback they got was just like super negative, and like some of this, because it was like 1906 or 5, and there were things that they were doing in that church that was just not okay. Like black people and white people being in the same building. That wasn't okay. And so, the standard Pentecostal church, people yelling and rolling around and dancing and, throwing chairs. I don't know what else they were doing back then. I wasn't there, but we'll go with it. So out of that, revival sparked other things. Visions were born, dreams were, began, stuff like that. And so tonight, I just wanted to talk about, like, man, what does a movement look like? How do we get there? I think one of the biggest issues that we face today as Christians is that we tend to have our spiritual side of our life separate from the work side, from the family side, from the school side, from the just the side out here. So we'll call that like your natural side, okay? And then we'll call like being in the church spiritual side, okay? So on with the story. And so when those two are at odds, there's tension. Like when you're doing things, you know, like when God doesn't factor into the things like your work life and your school life and your family life, and he only factors into the hour that you are here, or the 2 hours that you spend during the week, or whatever it is, like there's tension. Just tension. There's just tension that starts. And so in the Bible it says, God is so crafty. Can I say that? I was reading this today. I was like, man, God, you are just, you're mean. This is what I was thinking. But then at the same, I mean, he's good, okay? He's good, but then I was like, wow. So it says in Ecclesiastes 3:11, it says, he has made everything beautiful in its time. He also has planted eternity in man's hearts and minds, a divinely implanted sense of a purpose working through the ages, which nothing under the sun but God alone can satisfy. Yet so that men cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. So what I love, he has planted in us eternity. He has planted in us something that craves him. And nothing in this world can satisfy that. Nothing. Not your spouse, not your family, not people. He's the only one that can satisfy that need. And so it's like crazy. Like I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, you're tricky, God. You're just a tricky guy. Because he puts such a desperation in each one of us to want him. You know what I mean? Like there's such a crave to want to know him more. And such a want to want to know him more. That it's like you can't get away. And when you experience him, you don't want to. Because in essence, he created us exactly the way that we are. And so we'll go on in James 1:17-18, it says, so my very dear friends, don't get thrown off course. Every desirable and beneficial gift comes out of heaven. The gifts are rivers of light cascading down from the Father of light. There is nothing deceitful in God, nothing two-faced, nothing fickle. He brought us to life using the true word, showing us off as a crown of all his creation. The reason why I wanted to read that, that's out of the Message, okay? So if you're like, what the heck is that? It's out of the Message, all right? So the reason why I wanted to read that is because God has gifted us all in different ways. What sparks a movement? An ordinary person grabbing onto the thing that God has made them to do and doing it. That's it. God is the extraordinary. There it is. We plant and water, God provides the increase. That's our job. Our job is not to provide the increase. That's his job. But when we press into who he's called us to be, movements start. Mm-hmm. Movements start. So, one of the examples I had was, like, did anybody watch the UFC fight last night? Yeah. Nobody did, okay. Well, I'm here to tell you that the first women's UFC fight was last night. Yeah. It was crazy, okay? Yeah. She was, wow, that's all I'm going to say. It was probably one of the most exciting fights I've ever seen. You know, they have the men running for their money, you know, because, like, just a regular, like, chick fight, you know, how the pulling of the hair and all that stuff, and it's crazy. And one of my friends was like, I just don't think that, you know, women's fighting is probably going to be that, you know, that fun to watch. And I'm like, but I just think of other fights that I've seen women get into